colonies had it easy. We did not enforce our mercantilist tax system until we had to pay for a war protecting them. Then they threw all the tea in the harbor.
What's good? My name is Coach Thornberry. I am a high school history teacher from the U.S. state of Georgia. This is our third video over Standard 2. In the first video, we went over the cultural demographics and the diversity of the 13 colonies. In the second video of the second standard, we went over the horrors of the Middle Passage and the birth of the African American or the Black American community in the United States. In this video, we will go over salutary neglect. I know we've gone over mercantilism, but it's important to remember that Britain didn't enforce those mercantilist rules for the entire colonial period. We are still looking at Standard 2, describe the early English colonial society and investigate the development of its governance. Specifically, the substandard we are looking at is Substandard C. Describe the different methods of colonial self-governance in the period of salutary neglect. The colonies developed systems of local self-government during the early colonial period. The tradition of English colonial self-government began early with the pledge of majority rule under the Mayflower Compact. Most colonies had local assemblies to legislate local matters while remaining loyal to the crown. Like in Britain, voting in the colonies was restricted to white males who owned land, but this encompassed a higher proportion of citizens in the colonies than it did in Britain. The House of Burgesses was established after Jamestown's founding, making it the oldest elected legislature. Taxes were levied by colonial representatives and established a tradition of local taxation by locally elected representatives. Many New England colonies had town meetings that met regularly for people to vote directly on public issues. The English crown had limited involvement in local government matters in the colonies as long as the mercantilist demands for resources was being met. The political structure of each colony by time of the Revolutionary War consisted of a governor and an elected legislature. It's important to understand that the tradition of self-government was already present in the colonies when the Revolution broke out. By 1760 in Virginia, new landowners had to move to the frontier of settlement to afford land. These new frontier settlements faced conflicts over land with American Indians. The settlers felt that the House of Burgesses was not providing protection because they lived further out from the wealthy settlements like Jamestown. Nathaniel Bacon led a militia against the American Indians and then eventually against the Virginia elite itself, including Royal Governor William Berkeley. Bacon's rebellion established an expectation that the government would work for the good of all citizens, not just for the wealthy. So we're looking at our colonial timeline. Jamestown is founded in 1609. The Revolution breaks out in 1776. For most of this period, the colonies had substantial self-rule. British King James II, who was Catholic, was crowned in 1865 and tried to rule without Parliament. James came after Charles II, who restored the crown. So this is shortly after New York is established for King Charles II's allies as well as North Carolina. The Protestant majority opposed the Catholic king. James II tightened control over British North America. The crown combined the New England colonies with New York and New Jersey to form the Dominion of New England. The colony was governed by a governor and a council appointed by the king. James II was overthrown in the Glorious Revolution. Protestant monarchs King William and Queen Mary took the throne. As a result of the Glorious Revolution, the Dominion of New England was dissolved and returned to their previous colonial arrangement, with the exception of Massachusetts Bay and Plymouth combining to form the Massachusetts colony. The colonies re-established local government after the Glorious Revolution. In 1721, Robert Walpole became the first English Prime Minister. His approach to the colonies became known as salutary neglect. Walpole believed that the colonies would be more productive if they were not limited to trade policies such as the Navigation Acts. From the 1720s into the French and Indian War in the 1760s, the colonies were less restricted with who they could trade with. Essentially, the mercantilist policies were eased up until the French and Indian War. This system of salutary neglect continued until after the French and Indian War in 1763, at which time England faced mounting debt and began to seek greater local control over the colonies. Having the long-standing tradition of colonial self-government made the Crown's new stricter policies and taxes less tolerable. Political autonomy and self-government in the colonies grew to be an expectation and formed an independent American identity that ultimately led to war between England and her colonies.
Perhaps we were too lenient on the colonies in the colonial period.
Seriously, what we'll talk about when we start Unit 2 or Standard 3 is how the sudden change in policy from salutary neglect to new taxation after the French and Indian War would begin a cycle of violence that leads to the American Revolution. In the meantime, in our next video, we'll cover the First Great Awakening and talk about how religion became very important in the colonies. And to further agitate my evil British alter ego, it'll further be breaking away from the Church of England. Until next time, keep it real and take it easy.